Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I want to talk to you about some of the impact of loneliness and isolation on our mental health. So, number one, I feel like this really needs to be talked about. I feel like a lot of everything that's happened over the past little while has not been addressed from like the emotional components enough. So hopefully here that's something we can do and provide as a resource for you guys who are watching this channel, just to have some like tips and tools and things you can apply to your everyday life that will be beneficial for these things that are like, happening, and there are times where we go through life and we are subjectively maybe taking things the wrong way, personalizing things, overreacting to things. And then there are times in life where the external world is actually going through a really, really challenging time, or our real life experience is really challenging. And as a byproduct of that, it's its own sort of form of trauma. And I think it would be naive to not recognize, and this isn't me trying to like make this bigger than it needs to be, but just it would be naive not to recognize that the collective over the past 18 or so months has been going through like a collective trauma. And I'm not here to judge why or to talk about the reasons behind it. But what I am here to do is say, we need to acknowledge the effects, and we need to acknowledge the effects that no matter what happened, no matter what society had to do or didn't have to do, we are in a position right now where suicide rates are up, where there's been more domestic abuse, alcoholism, addiction. A lot of things are really spiraling out of control, and we need to take a look and we need to have discussions about this stuff. And so hopefully here through this channel once a week as we put these videos out, these can provide resources and tools and just support for anybody who's feeling like, why am I not feeling normal? Why is my life feeling this way lately? And instead of judging yourself, to actually inquire and to look for understanding, and to be able to acknowledge, oh, it's been a really weird time. For some people it's been massive job changes and job loss. For some people, it's been a tremendous amount of uncertainty. For others, it's been huge challenges to relationships because of sudden distance that's taken place. And for some other individuals, it's been loneliness, isolation. I mean, I could go on and on. But I want us to be able to discuss these things and to share on here. And I want you guys who are watching this to be able to share with me in the comments anything that you've been feeling or experiencing that you need support. And I'm going to make sure that we grab all these things as a team, and I can keep putting videos out to just touch on different support systems that we may need to address some of the challenges we may be facing as a collective. So as we talk about loneliness, the first thing I want you to understand is feeling lonely is, you're not alone in the feeling of loneliness, if that makes sense. Prior to everything that's happened over the last little while, more than 3 in 5 Americans report being lonely, with more and more people reporting feeling like they're left out, or feel poorly misunderstood by other people, or just feel a lack of companionship in their lives in general. And this is according to a Cigna survey using a UCLA loneliness scale. And this survey was done of over 10,000 Americans who are also employed full-time, by the way. So, this is not something where it was like people are completely locked down or isolated. This is pre everything that's taken place. So we can only imagine how much those numbers have grown and expanded. So number one, like if you're feeling lonely, you're not the only one feeling this way. A tremendous amount, the vast majority of people will be feeling this way. And maybe this is something that's more consistent and pervasive for some and more sporadic and acute for others. But the reality is, like, that is something we can connect over. And I'm going to give you guys some really important tools about connection and what it takes and how we can pivot during a time like what we've been experiencing, and like what we may or may not go into again in the winter, depending on what country you live in, what part of the world you're in. And research also shows around loneliness that Gen Z, so 18 to 22-year-olds now, or up to 18 or 22-year-olds now, tend to report the highest level of loneliness, which I find to be really interesting. And we could look at some of like why that's taking place as well. And there's a lot of, reasons to avoid social connection or intimate connection because we have our phones. We've got, these indirect ways of getting our needs met for connection that are very dopamine inducing and quite addictive, like social media, or, we've got all these shows and all this entertainment and ways of like getting our connection needs met, but in very indirect forms. And we're going to talk a lot about how this all plays out. And according to Dr. Sue Varma, loneliness itself is actually becoming a public health crisis, which means it's having a tremendous impact on society in general. And the subjective feeling of loneliness that's being reported by people, experts are estimating, is similar on our mental, emotional, and physical health as the detriment of smoking 15 cigarettes daily. And that when we feel lonely, this has a correlated increase or impact related to the development of anxiety, depression, obesity, and researchers estimate that this can even increase our risk of heart attack by up to 30%. The UK, in fact, has even appointed like a loneliness minister, and in San Francisco, there's a friendship hotline you can call. And so there's all these different dynamics that are being put into play here, and all these different stats that are showing up. And I think it's really important for us to be able to sit down and actually acknowledge that these things are taking place. So a lot of that came from this really powerful paper I was reading about in terms of from Dr. Sue Varma, just in terms of like loneliness in general and the impact that needs to be addressed. Now, I want to share with you some tools that can be really beneficial. So number one of the things that I know from a lot of the research I've been doing over the years is that when we can't get a need met in a preferred form, this impacts our subconscious mind and it impacts the way that we feel. So like, let's say, for example, the cleanest example I can think of is we go through a breakup. And what happens when we go through a breakup? Well, we had one major source, our adult relationship became our primary attachment figure. This primary attachment figure became this major source of how we get our needs met in a relationship. Now, this primary attachment figure is gone. And now the subconscious mind was used to this way of getting its needs met and now has to transform, it has to transition and get needs met from itself more often again, emotionally, from friends, from family members. We are eventually going to get the needs supplemented that were being met from a relationship. Maybe we had emotional connection, maybe we had feelings of being admired or loved or supported. We're eventually going to be able to show up and give some of those things to ourselves, get them from friends, family members, perhaps enter into new romantic relationships long-term. But in that intermediary period where our brain is experiencing that initial disconnect and suddenly has to change all of its strategies and all of its programming to learn to get its needs met in different forms and to adapt and adjust, that's the place we experience the most pain. Pain is a symptom and it's a feedback mechanism to let us know at the emotional level that we have unmet needs. It's there to support us and tell us that so we can action these things. So when we're going through these huge world changes, whether it's conducive to skyrocketing loneliness and the impact that has not just on our mental, emotional well-being, but even on our physical health, when we're going through this huge transition, this huge change, well, all of a sudden, we have to be able to consciously adapt. We have to understand that all these things are being taken away. All these things are changing. This is really difficult. And if you're experiencing pain and suffering, don't worry, it's normal to do that or to feel that way, but let's do something about it together. Let's like literally decide, okay, what do I need to do in order to fill those buckets back up of connection despite the experience that I'm having? And to me, what this means is if you're forced to spend more time alone, or if there's just a society all of a sudden it's a lot more conducive to loneliness, we can close that gap in different forms. So we can close that gap by literally being more vulnerable in our relationships, by learning what our needs are, and then actually communicating those things to others. So let's just say, for example, that you really need in your relationships to feel seen and heard. Well, then really sharing, hey, it's really important for me to feel understood, and I like to be heard and seen, and for my opinions and perspective to be understood. I like when people are like listening actively. It's really meaningful to me. We can communicate those things so people around us who love us, who care for us, know how to best support us in that way. And I understand that not everybody has like a really trusted figure or a set of figures in their lives right now, for many different reasons. And if you don't have that person that you can go to or that set of people to go to, then you can build that relationship out in the relationship to yourself, so internally, and show up for those things. And that's part of what primes our subconscious mind to then allow that to land more effectively with others. It makes it part of our new subconscious comfort zone. And it actually allows us to have more fulfilled relationships so that those changes can start within the relationship to ourselves. And then we can go out and consciously and intentionally find ways of meeting new people in different forms. And I've mentioned this before on this channel. We can join communities, join meetup groups, join classes, things online. Like we can do so many different things, but we have to take the time to brainstorm and pivot and adapt so that the world and the sort of crisis that the world is going through doesn't have to be something that directly takes our needs away. It may take our needs away in the preferred form that we're used to getting them, but we can pivot and we can adapt and we can get our needs met in new, different, more creative, innovative ways so that we do not have to feel this sense of helplessness in the situation. And that's a really important thing. So one great thing would be like more vulnerability in your relationships, more openness, sharing your imperfections. Research shows that when it comes to loneliness, there is a much greater impact on the quality of connection over the quantity of connection. So in other words, the quality of connection we have in our lives, the more depth, the more emotional intimacy, the more vulnerability we have between ourselves and other people, that will always overpower the quantity. So how many friends we have, how often we get to see somebody in terms of quantity of social connection. The depth of our connection is really what creates the absence of loneliness. And that creates a deeper sense of meaning, a deeper sense of belonging. The more vulnerable we are and the more we share ourselves with other people, the more we actually feel seen and heard and loved for all of our parts, including our imperfections. And when we think of like love and connection that we truly want, we don't want to just be loved for our good parts. We want to be loved for our imperfections. And that's what makes us feel truly connected. But we can't feel those things unless we are actively opening up about those things to begin with, unless we are actually opening ourselves to share. So with all of that being said, a few key tools. And by the way, if you want to do a really deep dive into this and you want supportive tools, we literally have a course inside PDS called Overcoming Loneliness and the Science of Connection. And it breaks down a tremendous amount of this stuff in detail with like reprogramming tools and action steps and a resource list and workbook exercises you can do. And you can actually check this out for free for 7 days. And along with that, you can check out our whole community. I'm doing a lot of hard work with our amazing team who's really behind this, like really trying to build out the community features we have at PDS to supplement for the fact that people are going through these crazy changes in the world right now. So we have like 2 or 3 community events per day. I do 4 live webinars per week with our students. People get on there, they chat, they hang out afterwards. We've got like an internal Discord chat channel. People can share resources, advice, and just things that they're sharing on their healing journey. We've got other coaches and counselors. We've got a whole bunch of stuff going on inside to help deal with this. So, you know, whether it's that or whether it's you join a different community, like go search out online resources, communities, things that can't be taken away from you despite whatever may or may not be happening in the world, because connection is really important, and it's really important to our overall well-being. And it does start with self-connection. It really, truly does. Like the more intimate and open and clear and connected we are in the relationship to ourselves, the more availability we have to breathe that in our interpersonal relationships with others. But we also have to take action. We also have to say, this sucks. If that's what we're feeling, this sucks. It does not feel good. How can I start by healing the relationship to myself first and then going out and taking action second? And sometimes in between that, and you'll see this in the Overcoming Loneliness course, we have to actually reprogram our fears of connection, because sometimes we go through pain points or challenges or traumas and we learn to fear connection. We learn, oh, you know, if I show up and people judge me, then I'm not good enough. And so I don't want to feel that way. So I won't connect with people, or people will violate my boundaries and I don't want to connect with anybody like that. Or people take advantage of me, so why bother? Like we can have all these wounds and barriers that are not necessarily a reflection of what all of our connections and relationships will be like long-term, but more a reflection of things we've experienced that have been difficult in the past that our subconscious mind is holding on to try to protect us. But in essence, projects the likelihood of it recurring, like assumes it'll always occur externally. And then we go into self-protection mode instead of growth mode. And as long as we stay there, we're going to limit our ability to feel connected, to feel safe in our interpersonal connections and relationships, and to empower the skill sets we may need to build healthy relationships long term. So that could look like us being able to build our capacity to set boundaries, our capacity to communicate our needs, our capacity to assert ourselves when needed, so that we can feel seen and heard and understood and connected, so that we can feel like our needs are going to be met from our loved ones. So there's a lot, there's a lot more to say about this, but these are some really good places to start. And I hope that you guys, don't feel too lonely at this time. And if you do, please share. Please write in the comments. Please share what you need in terms of resources that I can put out in terms of videos long term. We will be talking a little bit more about other things related to this, like social anxiety over the last little while, and different core beliefs that are associated with that. That's also in the loneliness course as well. But please let me know what you need, and I'm going to do my absolute best as one person, so I may not be perfect, and I'm far from it as a person, but please feel free to share what it is that you need, what I can do to support you. And I'm happy to do that in the best way that is available to me at this time. And my heart really goes out to anybody who's been going through a hard time, or is afraid to go through a hard time in the winter. So I'm here, and we've got a lot of amazing community members here as well. And thank you for being a part of this channel and community in general. Thank you. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in tomorrow's video.